Thank you. Good morning. So it's two Italians in a row on stage, right? That says something. All right, so good morning. Today I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing at Microsoft and Microsoft Web Technologies, which is the company I work for. Let me give you a brief introduction about myself. Actually, Cedric, I've been doing open source events for a while, since this year is my 21st year in open source. So for the American law, I'm actually, an adult in open source, as they say. I started in 1992. It was a big pile of floppies, Linux 0.99 patch level 15, to be precise. In 1994, I founded the first European Linux organization, the first official one. Name it was the Italian Linux Society back then. Went on, contributed to a bunch of projects all over the place, eventually made it to being a committer at the Apache Software Foundation, and eventually got to be a member. That was one of the best days in my life, the great recognition of open source for my technical contribution. I have the honor today to serve as a vice president of the Apache Software Foundation. And when I think that I'm actually a lawyer, that still surprises me. So I owe all that I am to open source, and I will always work with open source. And when 3 years ago I joined Microsoft, I thought that that was a great chance for me to do even more and to find a company that has actually changed a lot and has become more open. We have plenty of evidence, but I wanted to go more to the root and tell you what has changed and why we are doing this today. So first of all, today I want to talk to you about opportunities. And I'm going just to use a couple of slides. I also want to get away from the Microsoft PowerPoint bullet points. I'm just trying to make a point in telling you that how the landscape has changed in just a few years. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago, we finally decided, me and my wife, to get in the garage and deal with all the boxes that still were there from where we moved from Italy. And so I went through a box of paperwork, and I found a proposal that I actually wrote in 2001. In 2001, I was working as the CTO at a very interesting startup. It was at the crossroads between what we called old media and new media. Fancy word to say that we had people from television, people from internet, and we wanted to do something new. We came up with this idea that back then was quite a breakthrough. The idea that we could build an interactive TV show using SMS text. The Italians in the audience may recall that there was this TV show called 2008, which was run in 2001, led by Andrea Pezzi, and it was a quiz show. We would ask questions to the audience will answer via SMS, and they would win actual money in terms of recharge for their phone or whatever they chose. So the idea was neat. And then I was asked to implement it technically. And this proposal was this proposal that I brought in front of the board of directors. So in 2001, if you wanted to develop a system like that, first of all, you had to take a big, bold bet, because you knew that you needed hardware. You knew that you needed hardware, you knew that, but you couldn't really size it. I mean, and the point is that procuring a server would take at least a couple of weeks, ordering it, getting it, provisioning it. So we had to supersize a bit, make sure that we had room, and still we were shaking on the first night, hoping that the service wouldn't just melt down. And I wish that was that simple. The other thing that we had to do was, of course, repurpose a janitor's closet into a minimal data center, put some air conditioning in, put some UPS and electrical continuity and all that jazz. And then we went to the telcos and we asked them, all right, we want your SMS feed. And that was something that they really didn't do back then. They had ways, but they required leased lines. So we had to run 4 different leased lines from the 4 different Italian providers. And then, we got into the interoperability nightmare of dealing with someone who was using SS7, someone who was using just plain text files, someone who was using some weird encoded stuff that we didn't know how to deal with? Well, eventually we ended up finding an open source project. I don't know if anyone here has heard about a project called Keynote, but it did exactly what we needed. It was an adapter. It was a way to send and receive SMSs, so it was just what we needed. That was awesome. This was an awesome finding. I don't know how we could have pulled it off. Anyway, long story short, I prepared that document for a board of directors meeting, and it got a price tag at the end. We estimated the price as 400,000 euros. Now, that's a price that makes you wonder. I still remember, you know, bulging eyes from board members telling me, are you sure we want to do this? Is that what we need to spend? Is that what we need? What is the return? What is the possibility? What are the risks? I mean, there was a humongous amount of scrutiny, and at the end, it took a lot of gut to actually pull it off and say, all right, we'll do it. It wasn't an easy decision by all means. And I can tell you that the first night, when we sat by the server and we saw the SMS coming in, remember, this was a quiz show with money changing hands. In Italy, which is a highly regulated country, that also means that we had public notaries looking at it. We were under some kind of heavy scrutiny. Well, the server survived, right? So we ran the show, and we spent this fantastic $400,000, and after we had these servers powered on 2 days a week, the day of the show and the day after to run all the computation. And after 10 episodes, of course, the show folded down as it was supposed to be, and we had 2 very expensive coffee tables in terms of service. That were very nice for, you know, playing around, but quite not as interesting as they would be. Well, that went well. But at the same time, when I saw this document, I said, all right, let me try and see what it would cost today to do the same thing using cloud. I'm a Microsoft guy. I looked at Azure. But I can tell you that the price ballpark is the same. Come on. It doesn't vary that much. I also cheated a little bit. I assumed that, you know, in the meantime, there were important technology changes. So I could use service buses. I could use smartphones, and the idea that, well, yeah, I can do text, but I can also do apps. I can also do other ways. But the bottom line is that I came up with an admittedly aggressive estimate of $200. $200 to run the same thing. Now, the aggressive estimate was based on the idea that, hey, I need those servers 2 days a week, and then I turn them off, and I don't pay for them, right? That aggressive idea was based on building apps and using internet way more than SMS. But for kicks, I also tried to understand what it would cost if I were to just replicate the exact same thing and be very conservative. The price tag that I came up with was in the region of $10,000 to $12,000. All right? So we're starting from $400,000. Are we going back to possibly 200? And I can tell you that I would have gone in front of the board with a proof of concept, not just a wild bet. I would have gone there with some working code. I wouldn't go there with something that would prove that, hey, we can do this, and we can do this in a scalable way. Don't worry, it won't melt down because I can just increase the number of servers almost instantly, and it will work. And when I think that we are talking about a price tag that is 1/10 of 1,000 of what it used to be, well, that beats Moore's law by a mile. And I can help by thinking that we are living really miraculous times. And I can help by thinking that there has never been a better time to do something. And in a way, I have to say that as technologists, this puts us a little bit in the backseat. The importance and the focus today is on ideas, because the technology is out there. And most of the technology is open. And the idea of being able to work with open technology, the idea of being able of mixing and matching stuff from all over the place and rapidly connecting it, well, that's one of the other powerful game changers. And this is something, going back to what we do at Microsoft, that we really believe in. Because when these guys still look like young guys, they had this big, bold mission of a computer on every desk, on every home. Well, that's one of the most democratizing moves that I've seen. You could argue about the way the proprietary software versus the free software approach, et cetera, but it cannot be argued that this was a key milestone in the idea that everyone today has an incredible amount of access to the technology. So we like to think of this in terms of evolution, in terms of revolution, in terms of what has changed. And this is the second key message that guides us. The idea that we definitely need openness today to succeed. The idea that our customers, the startups out there, the enterprises out there, they need a new approach. And this is where we want to go. We have been listening to our customer, we have changed, and we understood how to implement open. Now, having been in this business for a while, I can also tell you that open is probably one of the most abused terms in IT. It came to mean everything, right? Starting from open systems, and now we are faced with new challenges. And I would argue that today is the time to redefine what open really means. Let me tell you why. I want to give you two quick examples. Let's talk about the cloud. We still don't know what openness really means in the cloud. A few years ago, we probably would have brushed it off with the idea that, yay, open source. If it's open source, it's open. If it's not open source, it's not open. Open source is the necessary and sufficient condition to openness. Well, guess what? I don't think that works in the cloud. I don't think that works in a place where we are about to just ship our workloads and have someone else managing them from us in a way that we control only minimally. And by the way, this is not a bad thing. Years ago, I was managing servers, and I still remember one day where I had to buy a last-minute plane ticket, and me and my hard drive went to the Netherlands to replace a failed hard drive in our server room. Those were horrible times. We don't want to do that. Today, we really want to focus on the business case. We really want to focus on having our workloads sync in the cloud, and we're fine with those workloads being managed by a provider. That's exactly where we want to be. The point is that the role of open source here goes a little bit in the backdrop, because if it doesn't matter, then we are seeing already cloud providers that are using possibly open source behind the scenes, but in a way that is not accessible to us. So maybe, just maybe, we need to redefine what open means in that context. And then let's talk about devices. So devices are another story where there is a lot of intermediation happening. It's not like the early days of PCs where I would go and buy a bare-bone piece of hardware and install the software that I wanted. These devices are controlled by my carrier. These devices are controlled by my manufacturer. As an end user, which is, to me, has always been the focus of my open source work, how does it impact my mom? Not how does it impact me as a geek, as someone who has the technical ability to hack and maybe solder some jumpers and get around stuff. Well, in this sense, this whole intermediation layers, we're seeing what they take us to. They take us to a system that may be open on the surface, but then again, not so much. So we need to really understand what openness means over there. And in trying to redefine that, I came to the conclusion that it's really a multifaceted notion that we are after. And today, when we consider open, what we should really consider is some combination of open source, crucial, essential, needs to be there one way or the other. But it's also about open standards. And open standards matter now more than ever. We actually need to come to an agreement on what open standards mean. I think that the standardization process today is being undergoing a big transformation in terms of, well, how much of standards are done with code? Is that the right way of doing standards, or should standards be specifications that are freely implementable? We're seeing some mix-up on that front, and this is something that we need to clear. The other point, as Roberto rightly said, is communities. You cannot do without. Honestly, I'm a member of the Apache Software Foundation. I'm extremely proud of that. And I always argued before Microsoft, after Microsoft, until the day I die, that open source without a community backing it is useless. Those are random bits that sit on a repository untouched and they rot. Just like an apple. They wither and they rot. If there isn't a community behind it, it's pretty much useless. And finally, today, we cannot do without interoperability. I'm sure that if I was to run a poll in this room of, what devices you are running, what version of operating system you are running, what are the devices in your pocket, we will easily end up with 20, 25, something more. Well, all those devices need to interoperate, and when you sit and think about what it takes to all those devices to be able to open the same web page and interact with it in the same manner, to be able to get your email, well, there's some magic there. And interoperability matters now more than ever. So 4 pillars. This is my personal recipe. I actually like to think of it, being a person of size, as the recipes for cakes. The key ingredient to bake a cake: flour, egg, butter, sugar, right? With those 4 ingredients, you can bake as many cakes as you want. And the problem is understanding how much of those you need, but it's never just one. You don't bake a cake with just flour. You don't have, today, an open project that is just open source. At a very minimum, we want open source and a development community. But most likely, we want to see also some interface with open standards. And if interoperability is not part of the equation, well, we're building island. And that's not what we do. At Microsoft Open Tech, what you can see is our logo. Our logo is a bridge. Our logo is a bridge because that's exactly what we do. We bridge Microsoft technologies and non-Microsoft technologies. So let me tell you a little bit about this company. It was founded a year and a half ago, and it's a company made of engineers and standard experts and community experts. And what we do is we deliver. We deliver code. We have now more than 75 projects that we delivered in, roughly, what's that, 21 months now? 20 months? So that's a good average. Among those, just to cite something, we have been the ones building VM Depot, which is a catalog for open source images for Azure. How many of you know that Azure runs Linux? The Microsoft people in the audience don't need to raise their hands. All right. Well, not many. Okay, surprise. Azure, our cloud platform, runs Linux. All right. Today, you can go to the Azure portal and run on top of Azure your choice of Ubuntu, CentOS, and 2 flavors of SUSE. But that's not enough. That's the official gallery of images. On top of that, we built a portal, vmdepot.msopentech.com. And if you go there, you will find that the community contributed more than 700 images to date. 700. That means that if there is an open source project out there, it's probably on VM Depot. And it's probably something that you can run on top of Azure. Azure, which, by the way, is a cloud that runs on open standards, runs on open API, runs on SDKs that are open source, that are on GitHub, and they are accepting contribution, and they have a thriving community. So, that's the Microsoft you don't expect. That's the Microsoft that in 2012 was named among the top contributors to Linux. That's the Microsoft Open Technologies that a few months ago contributed significant patches to Chrome and Firefox. Right? So we are active, we are there, and we are not, by far, the only group at Microsoft that does open source. The change has been pervasive. You may have heard recently of our announcements about Hadoop support on Windows Azure. Well, Of course, there is a business impact. We can talk about that, but what interests me most is letting you understand how we do things and how, when it comes to open source in Microsoft, we try to do the right thing. Everything that we did with Hadoop was contributed back to the community. Everything. We built a set of tools on top of Hadoop that are part of our BI suites, right? Those tools don't work on the Microsoft version of Hadoop. They work on any version of Hadoop. And we are committed to keep it like that. And with this kind of approach, in merely a year or so, we managed to be good members of the community. As a matter of fact, the chair of the Hadoop projects at Apache today is a Microsoft employee. As a matter of fact, I tried to find how many Apache committers we have at Microsoft, and wow, that's a lot. A lot of them, I didn't know them. As a matter of fact, 3 months ago or so, in July, we had a new employee at Microsoft Open Technologies, Ross Gardler, the president of the Apache Software Foundation. He just joined us. By the way, that causes a little bit of a problem because he reports to me in Microsoft, but he's the president of Apache. I'm a vice president, so I report to him in Apache. So depending on, 9 to 5, I call the shots. After hours, it's about him. So this company has changed. This company has changed incredibly. When I was there 3 years ago and changed for my interview, I was surprised myself. And on the first day on the job, I was told by my manager that my first task was to go around the company and talk to all the people who have a vested interest in open source. Well, I can tell you that after 3 years, and a lot of going around the Microsoft campus, which is a nice place, you should come visit, and a lot of flying around the world. As a matter of fact, I'm on a whirlwind tour that will see me next week all the way over Asia. I do that all the time, and I enjoy it. I have the best job in the world. I'm not done yet. I keep meeting people. As a matter of fact, can the Microsoft folks stand up for a second? We got you surrounded. All right? So today we are here in spades. For those of you who are seeing this on video, it was quite a few people in the audience. I think we are 20 or so. So come work with us. We have a lot more to do, but we have changed. We have become more open, and we cannot wait to work for you. Thank you.